Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
And now let's welcome our main speaker for tonight, Carla.
Hi everybody, my name's Carla Moore and I'm an alcoholic. Hi, Carla. And I would like to thank Kevin in absentia for inviting me here in emergencia to come and speak with you tonight, and Jody for agreeing. It's an honor and a privilege to participate in any way in Alcoholics Anonymous. From the beginning, dumping ashtrays, setting up chairs, tearing down chairs, sharing, and when I was new, I really loved to share too. I had a lot of participation meetings, and it was just, I wanted to be part of, and I enjoy being a part of today. I'm a little bit tired because I've been out in the heat, but it's a good tired, and a lot of my days are like that these days. Since September 25th, 1987, I've been sober and haven't had to have anything that affects me from the neck up, and that's due to the program and the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I like my days a lot most of the time. You know, there's a lot of discomfort sometimes, and I feel that, but it always comes around and gets better, always comes full circle, and I get to be alive and awake to experience that. So I'm grateful for that. When I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, though, I would have told you I'm an alcoholic because the life I had, the family I had, the sisters I had, the brother I had, the kid I had, the boyfriends I had. You know, if you had my life, you'd drink too. And I get here, and I take that first step, and I realize I'm an alcoholic because of the way alcohol affects me when I drink. I got a strange and abnormal reaction to alcohol when I drink. And before that, I've got that obsession that keeps twisting my head around, that brings me right back to addressing that first drink, the drink that takes me away, that sets up that craving. And then I drink till I'm done, and usually I'm done when I pass out. And then I've got that spiritual malady, that thing that I've always had, that separation from a God, or that gaping hole in my soul, that discomfort, that just feeling in the pit of my stomach, that emptiness, empty loneliness, and that disconnection from everybody, and that feeling of being apart from, and so different, and being different in a bad, wrong way. And the original sin, that was me. And I come to Alcoholics Anonymous, and you guys gave me a solution for that. You know, I walked around for a long time with this gaping hole in my soul and trying to fill it up with people, places, and things, and then eventually just booze had to fill it up. And now you guys taught me a way to give from the inside out, and that gaping hole gets smaller. It just gets smaller when I do what you ask me to do. It's not a requirement, newcomer, to like the stuff that we have to do here. It's only a requirement that we do the stuff that we have to do here. It's never been a matter of the way I felt coming in here, and a lot of times trying this new stuff I have to sneak up on myself. I can't really think about it too much. I just have to do it, and you know, it served me well. It served me well when I try to outthink you. And I heard this early on, and I hope you hear this too. You can be too smart for this program. You know, you can be too smart for the program, and outsmart yourself right out the door, they used to say. And so I hope that you'll sit back just a little bit and become teachable and stay in the seat. Stay till midnight and then try it again tomorrow. And if I don't say anything tonight, well, go home, read the big book, try to prove me wrong about a lot of things, and then come back and share it with somebody tomorrow. And just don't drink in between. I want to tell you I had a few good years when I was young. 4th, 5th, and 6th grade were wonderful. I had a great time. I was out of myself. I didn't know it looking back. That's what I know, is that I got good grades, and I had a few friends, and I loved sports, and I was out of myself, and then life started closing in on me a little bit. You know, I was one of those kids who had to be first around the track. I had to get the most A's. I had to win all the prizes, and oh my God, by the end of 6th grade, I was tired, and I thought, I don't know if I could keep this up. I needed some relief already from myself. And then that summer between 6th and 7th grade came around, and I could be found at a lot of my friends' houses whose parents weren't home, and we'd investigate their liquor cabinet, and then we'd start playing around with the boys, you know, and play that game, Spin the Bottle. I'm going to date myself here, I think, and some of you will get this. Some neighborhoods get this, some don't, but I'm going to share it anyway because it's my story. But we were playing a game of Spin the Bottle one afternoon. My first social resentment happened here. We were playing a game of Spin the Bottle, and I went off into the bedroom when the bottle hit me and another boy, and went in there. We both did the same thing, and when we came back out, he was a player and I was a slut. And I didn't understand that. I couldn't accept that. And all of my sponsors tell me that if I want fair, I can go to Pomona, but yeah. But I had a hard time accepting the things I couldn't change and that I didn't understand, and then my pride was in the way, and I got a reputation I didn't really believe I'd earned, and I didn't know where I was or how to do it, and it seemed like everybody else did, and my pride tells me to withdraw. I just started backing up. And I was 12 years old when I discovered what alcohol would do for me. Now, that wasn't my first drink, but it was the one that did it. It was the one that let me know I had a solution. I had a new solution. And I had been brought up in a Southern Baptist home, so I wasn't a stranger to the idea of a God, but I found alcohol to be quicker than a prayer. You know, it was... It was quicker than an apology. It was quicker than anything I have to do to be in a relationship with you, and I loved it. And I just kept going. Pretty soon home wasn't working for me, school wasn't working for me, and I started to find my hope out on the open road. And I'd get out there on the 10 freeway going east or the 101 freeway going north, and I'd stick my thumb out and I'd crawl in the car or the truck going wherever with whoever, and I'd be on my way to somewhere else, just on my way. And I love that feeling. Love the feeling. I like the bottle in the glove compartment. Any minute now I'm going to feel better. I got my solution and I'm on my way. And I never had any big plans about what I was going to do when I got there. I just went. You know, 35 cents in my pocket felt like faith. You know, and we worry about faith now, but when we, I don't know about you, but I was running all over the place back then, not thinking much. And I found myself when I was 14 in a place called North Beach with a friend of mine, and a couple of guys offered us money for sex on the street, and we did the next indicated thing, and boom, a whole new career path opened up for us. But you know, it's good to have a trade, and we never developed any particular marketing strategy. I just living a day at a time in a way I haven't had to live in a very, very long time. And a little by little, I trade away my self-respect, and little by little, trading away my dignity, and didn't even really know it. I just feel a little shift, just a little shift. And I felt less like I was being judged out there than I would when I would come home and try to live back in my community. I just didn't feel as judged back out there on the street. So I just kept going. I'd come home, I'd try to live with Mom and try to live with Dad, and that wasn't working. And paying little visits to Juvenile Hall, Riverside Juvenile Hall, then Central Juvenile Hall, and then going back home, and then finally being admitted to a mental hospital when I was 15. And I was supposed to be there 2 weeks, and I ended up being there for a year. I just sort of took to the place and made myself at home. And I really had no thoughts or anything about going home. I was just sick. I was a sick kid. I was restless, irritable, and discontent, and they called it disorders back then. They weren't talking to me a lot about alcoholism. They were talking to me about disorders, and they were giving me daily nutritional supplements, Thorazine, Mellaril, and Valium, and Dalmane sleepers in case that wasn't enough, in case I couldn't sleep through all of that. And and I just got busy. You can be very busy in the nut house if you're creative, and if you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. I loved all the boys all the time, you know, but my favorites were those smoldering, sexy type, you know, the getting ready to erupt and cold cock somebody at any second. You just never knew. And just my favorites. But I was always having to say goodbye to those guys. You know, my first boyfriend got hauled off to YA for throwing a chair through the window, and my next boyfriend got hauled off to YA for throwing a nurse through the window, and it just, you know. So I had to sit out at the smoke break bench, and I don't know about you, but I've always thought that I should have a soundtrack to my life, and just those songs that mean something. And so I'd play Diana Ross songs real loud and watch them go. They'd be cuffed and walking out with their PO, and I'd be smoking my tragic cigarettes. Touch me in the morning, then just walk away. Oh, it hurts so good. I think I was blue before I ever had a real date, and it just got worse. I mean, I just got busy. I went from the girls unit to the co-ed unit to the intensive care unit. I was intimately familiar with 5-point restraints, restless, irritable, and discontent at a very, very deep level back then. And I was pretty irritable myself, and I would go from very, very low depressions to very, very aggressive outbursts, and ended up on the intensive care unit. Now, I know that I was supposed to go the other way around, but I didn't, and I met the love of my life on the intensive care unit, and he was there kicking heroin in 17 days. He was going to get all better by then, and I ended up going over the wall with him, and I was locked up most of my adolescent life, and I went from the nut house to the juvenile hall to the rehab to the girls' home to leaving there, and I never went out the front door most of those places. I couldn't get out of juvenile hall because those walls were just too big, high, but all the rest, I was just always out the back door over the wall or something, and a lot of well-meaning people trying to give me some help that I just couldn't hang on to. When I hit the street, I know what'll fix me right now, and that's a drink. Alcohol fixes me right away. It does for me right now what I can't do for myself. And so it was working. Even with all the trouble it was causing, I was going back to the drink because that was my solution, made me feel better. And I left that girls' home with my roommate, and we were off and running, seeking that higher power, seeking that idea of God, that spiritual quest. I've never denied the existence of God, only my ability to access that power greater than myself. I just couldn't get it. And everything that I ever took trying to access that power greater than myself were the very things that were blocking me from the sunlight of the Spirit. And I had to come here to discover that. And it took a long time. And we were reading books, Baba Ram Dass, trying to figure out what be here now meant exactly. And, God might be in Oregon. We ended up in Eugene there for a while. And back then it was kind of, I was fascinated with the 60s, but I grew up at sort of the tail end, so I was sort of like a day late and a dollar short for the whole thing. I was 12 in 1969, so when I got to San Francisco, people were saying, oh yeah, they all went up to Oregon. So we got to Oregon, and then they were all, oh yeah, and a lot of old hippies and people were still living there. And then the Grateful Dead was playing, and it was in the air, and Santana, and we just liked that spirit. And I thought, when they talk about hoeing up here, they mean with a garden tool, and it's going to be different, and change from the outside in, and planted a little garden and tried to be real homey, and it just didn't. Two things happen: is one, when I can't drink the way that I need to, and sometimes we couldn't afford to, I am restless, irritable, and discontent. I am miserable to be around, a big pain in the ass. And when I can drink the way that I need to drink, I'm always overshooting the mark, and again, a big pain in the ass. And so if you sleep on other people's couches like I did, your friends are coming to you eventually, and the day's coming to tell you that you got to go. And they did, and I left and ended up back in my dad's house, and I just sat on his couch and I drank. I was 17 and a half years old, and I just drank. He had a closet full of booze, and he never drank it, and I figured it was there for me, and I just sat on his couch and drank. And I didn't know how to tell him I was afraid. I didn't know how to tell him I was proud or worried or anything. I didn't know any of that. I sat on his couch and I just drank until right before my 18th birthday, he came to me and he said what I know were the hardest words he ever had to say to his oldest daughter, and that was, I'm not going to watch you drink, and I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to watch you die, and I'm not going to help you do it. And you have to go. And I know that was hard for him, but now I'm scratching my head trying to figure out what to do next, and all I could think of was that one of the counselors at the rehab had told me I was a great actress. So I know today I misunderstood, but I ended up on Hollywood Boulevard, and not a lot of auditioning going on out there, just so you know. I was 18 years old, starting my days off with a pint of Pop-Off vodka, and I would go wherever the day took me. Some days I called it partying, and some days it was surviving. And it was just one gray day stretching out over another, and just one after another. a few months into that, I met a guy walking down Hollywood Boulevard, and I saw the light in his eyes, and I didn't realize it was orange sunshine, though, and we chatted it up, and we got along, and I moved in with him that night, and I didn't even know his last name, and then 6 weeks later, he's asking me to leave, and I still don't know his last name, but I just like to bring him up because he, years and years later, he was on my 8-step list in my first year of sobriety, and I couldn't find him, so I had to make amends in a different way. I just had to change myself, and my sponsor gave me some new things to do. She said, why don't you try being a friend to a man in a vertical fashion, and practice the principles and traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous in your relationships. And so that was good. But right before my 13th birthday, I had to go give a talk out on the other side of town on a Sunday afternoon, a hot Sunday afternoon, where I really didn't feel like it. If I could have gotten someone else to go, I might have. But I've been taught that if I've got nothing else to do on my calendar, no big emergencies, then I go do what I promised I would do. So I went out and I gave that talk, and of course I felt better when I was done. And right after the talk was over, a man walked up to me and said, where were you in 1976? And it was a guy from Hollywood Boulevard, standing there in front of me with 8.5 years of sobriety. And I had almost 13, and I got to make direct amends then, and that was awesome. I couldn't have set that up to save my life. It just walked up and kissed me on the cheek, and we had dinner after that, and he told me that I appeared, I mean, you can't tell in one dinner all the way, but he said, you appear to be the woman that I always thought you could be, but all of that stuff we were doing way back when got in the way, and that's due to you. That's Alcoholics Anonymous. That's due to the fellowship and the program. I had to work the program, and I have a partnership with a God of my understanding, or a God of my not understanding, and a big fellowship, and I love all of you. I don't like all of you, and I know that all of you don't like me. I just need to tell you that I'm too sick to hear you. Let me know exactly who you are. So, but it's all right, because what I've really seen, what I've really experienced in Alcoholics Anonymous is that whether you like me or not, you're always there for me. If my sobriety is in jeopardy, or if your sobriety is in jeopardy, I will be there. And it doesn't matter how I feel about you. It matters how I feel about this program, and that I am responsible to reach out and carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. And you never know what'll happen. But anyway, I probably didn't need to say that, but it just came to me. That was a long time coming. I spent another few months in Hollywood, and I ended up leaving there and finding a boyfriend, another boyfriend from another rehab, and go figure. I mean, the rehabs are full of boyfriends and girlfriends, right? You know? And we still, flying on the coattails of the 60s, we really, really love the idea of peace and love and all that stuff, but we just couldn't stop knocking the hell out of each other long enough to practice that principle completely. And so we beat each other up and down to the California coast, and we pitched a tent in the mountains in southern Oregon and lived there for a while until the baby came, and then we moved into a little trailer. And she got in the way of one of our fights. And by then, too, my boyfriend was one of those guys. His alcoholism had progressed further and faster at the time than mine had. And we'd go to a party or something, he'd mess somebody up or something up, and then people would come to me and they'd say, geez, how can you stand it? He's awful. And I'd take a big swig of whatever it was I had in my hand. And I could say, yeah, I know it's terrible. If you had my boyfriend, you'd drink too. And I want to tell you, you can fast forward years and years later, where my husband and I, at the time, were in the bar where we drank, and people would come up to him and they'd say, geez, she's so bad. How can you stand it? She's awful. And he'd say, I know if you had my wife, you'd drink too. So just give it time. It's progressive. So my daughter got in the way of one of our fights one afternoon, and I took her. She was about 10 months old, and I took her to Idaho, where, of course, it's going to be better. And I had 3 jobs up there, making a living tending bar and cocktail waitressing, and any normal person could have made a good living doing what I was doing. And I couldn't bring home enough money to pay rent for more than a week at a time. So we lived in those little rent-by-the-week motels up there, and my daughter was one of those kids that you see wearing a T-shirt and her underwear and yesterday's lunch going down the front of it because her mom's not paying attention. And I just wasn't. I lived to drink. I drank scotch up there now, and things had changed. I wasn't drinking scotch and mixing it with anything now, just straight, scotch straight, because those bubbles will give you a hell of a hangover. So, you know, you got to do something. And then I was back down in LA, and I was renting a room from my aunt in Covina with my daughter, and I was tending bar in a little place in Hollywood, and any normal person could have made a good living doing what I was doing in that bar. It wasn't a shameful job. It was a perfectly wonderful job, and every afternoon I'd kiss my daughter goodbye, who was almost 4 years old by now, and I'd stop off at the halfway point, which was a little bar called the First Cabin in Arcadia. And I'd stop and I'd have my primer drinks, my shots of Cuervo Gold and Budweiser backs, and I'd get ready and go out and do my shift in the bar in Hollywood, and I'd crawl home in the wee hours of the morning and start all over again. And one afternoon I kissed my daughter goodbye, as I had done months on end, and I stopped at that same bar in Arcadia, and I had those same shots of gold and same Budweiser backs, and there was nothing at all. I was not unhappy with that job in Hollywood, and I didn't love my daughter any less on that day than I love her today, but I could not get off the bar stool. I could not suspend my drinking long enough to go take care of business. And I sat on that bar stool and I drank. I drank through both of them. I lost the job and the kid in one fell swoop, and lived off the kindness of strangers there in that little place in Arcadia for a while, and until I rolled into another dive bar. I'd sit and I'd drink at night, and I'd hear the music, and I could feel my chest tighten, and my throat would close up, and I'd feel that gaping hole in my gut. And I knew that my daughter was still better off where she was, because I knew that it wasn't going to change anytime soon. That even with all the trouble that I was in, even with everything that was going on, alcohol still cut the edge. It still cut the edge in my life, and as long as I could keep drinking, I didn't have to do anything about my life, and I was on fire. And so I'd drink and I'd dance all the harder, and I rolled into that new dive bar, and I met my husband-to-be, and everybody started talking about my drinking, and I resented that, because it seemed to me that everybody was drinking there at that bar, and I didn't like it that I was a topic. And I said, you know, it's got to be this bar, it's got to be this business. I've been in this business too long, I've been on the street too long, and maybe if I could get married and get the kid back and make my life look like I thought yours looked, then it's going to be better. And so he and I got married about the time we should have split up, and we moved into that apartment. We found a cute little, it's called the Little Outpost Wedding Chapel. It's just on this other side of Victorville, right next to Shed World. Some of you might know it. Now, I think Shed World is still there, but the Outpost Wedding Chapel isn't. But it just got worse. I mean, I threw the first punch in that relationship. I just know the drill. I know the script. I know what's supposed to happen. And we got an active household. Sooner or later, some time had passed, and then I got my daughter back, for better or worse. We bought ourselves a big gun to protect ourselves from Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, and the only people we ever turned that gun on was each other. And it just kept going downhill. No matter how I tried to fix it or mold it or wrest satisfaction out of my life, it was not getting any better. And my first exposure to Alcoholics Anonymous was after one of our fights. We were at the bar where we drank one afternoon, and we were arguing over whether or not I should get off a bar stool, and I lost that fight, and I ended up with some black eyes and broken ribs, and not a lot of people in that bar feeling sorry for me, just glad I was leaving. And he took me to the hospital, and I got fixed up and then went home, and he had to leave that afternoon for work for the weekend, and he left me with a giant ice chest full of beer and a bottle of Beefeater gin chilling on top. And now I'm drinking gin because tequila had been making me so mean. I mean, you understand. And I started calling people, called the people I love, called the people I hate, let them all know. And I felt like a battered woman, so I called a battered woman's shelter, and I asked the woman who answered the phone to fix my life. And she asked me if I'd ever been to an AA meeting. I don't know how she made that leap, but she did. And what I heard her say was that if I went to an AA meeting that night, she'd fix my life. So I found one, and I went in, and two very kind women sat me down, gave me the newcomer packet, you know, a cup of coffee and a tissue, and I was feeling very sorry for myself. And I heard a woman speaker that night. She sat and she talked just like I am that night. And I'll tell you what, you can go to any meeting in the world in Alcoholics Anonymous, and if you are not ready, you are not going to stay sober. And that is that. And then you can go to the best or the worst, and you can go to the worst of them all and stay sober if that's what you're going to do. And I truly believe that. And I was not ready that night. What I heard her say was that somewhere during her drinking career she switched to beer, so I did. Thought AA will tell you to switch to beer, and my whole life began to revolve around beer because it takes a lot of beer. And but it also gave me the illusion that I was controlling my drinking, and so I'd start in the morning and then just cruise on through. And but eventually my body was taking a toll on my body, and I had that puffy face, that just very darling puffy face, and yellow, and my extremities were getting numb, and I had that beach ball with stilts look, you know, and the distended liver, and I weighed like 110 pounds when I got here. So I was just drinking beer and thinking I was getting away with it. We got evicted from that apartment and ended up living in a little room in his ex-wife's backyard. And I got a little alcoholic willpower together, and I found a job. I thought if I could answer phones at home, I could answer phones at somewhere else and get paid maybe. And so we found a little apartment. I worked hard and fast. And we got a little apartment across town, and it was me, my daughter, and my husband. And we just drank and lived the same way every day for the next year or so, and almost a year or a little over, right about that time. And we had one more of those fights where the cops are in the driveway and the lights are on and the neighbors are peeking out the window wondering what's going on at Charlie and Carla's house one more time. And now the kid's almost 9 years old, and she's standing in the corner in her mismatched clothes and her unkempt hair, and she's got that look of fear in her eyes. And I can't even bother to try to tell her it's going to be any different, because I don't know that. It hadn't been different for a very long time. And I didn't know how it was going to be. I kept waking up thinking I'm going to have some beers, and if everybody will chill out and just stop being so emotional that, translation, do it my way, then we're going to be all right. And it never happened. It hadn't happened like that for a long time. And so my husband left for the last time, and I sat on that couch and I drank. I drank at you, I drank at them, I drank at me, I drank at everybody who was going to do me wrong, everybody who had done me wrong. And it took coming to Alcoholics Anonymous to discover how much. A lot of the people I was angry with were long out of my life, miles out of my life, and I'm still drinking and I'm still mad. And it took coming here to discover how resentment and fear had ruled my life, how much, how deep. And people weren't even around. It was just me carrying it around and churning it. I just have a propensity for resentment, and I have to work. I have to do my part every day, not to internalize those resentments. My first sponsor told me that if I wanted to effect a conscious contact with a power greater than myself, that I could start by counting the coincidences in my life. And one of the first ones I could count was that I had moved in next door to a woman who had 5 years of sobriety in Alcoholics Anonymous. And she had seen the whole thing happen, and a few days later she brought me a big book and a 12 and 12, and she sat on my couch in my living room and she just talked to me, told me her story. And in her story I could tell that she used to drink like me, and over the last year I could see that she wasn't drinking like me anymore. She wasn't drinking at all. But what impressed me the most is that it didn't seem to bother her that she wasn't drinking. And that I wanted to know how to do, because God, for me, without a drink, without a fellowship, a God, a program, I feel like you've just stripped all the coating off my wires. I feel oversensitive and underloved. I don't know what you meant by what you just said or why you looked at me that way. And life closes in and it goes downhill from there. And I got to have a drink or I got to take some steps. And everything today that I do in Alcoholics Anonymous is about not having to approach that first drink. That's it. That's it. And if Alcoholics Anonymous ever loses its priority in my life, I know that drinking will again become my priority. It's that simple for me. And it says in the book that for us to drink is to die. And I know that I'm included in that us. And we say it all the time, it's a deadly disease, and then we go, oh, somebody died. Well, yeah, it's a deadly disease. And I've seen people die drunk and sober without using the program. People blow themselves away at 5 years sober, 5 years dry, because they're not using the program. Anyway, on a lighter note, I didn't get sober right away. That personality change for me, that psychic change, that shift happened for me sort of like shifting sands, a grain at a time. And about a week and a half later, one Sunday afternoon, I just didn't go back and buy any more beer. I made a left instead of right. I went to my neighbor. I shook it out that night. I shook it out that Sunday night and Monday night and into Tuesday. And then I went to my neighbor and I asked her what to do, and she sent me up to a meeting in Sierra Madre, and she told me to raise my hand and tell them I was new. And I went up there, and there was a 12 and 12 study, and I was so glad. I went in and I sat down, and I was sitting by the exit door, and just hearing a lot of things. That I heard a lot of hope. I didn't know if it was there for me. I didn't know if this was going to be one more of those things, one more of those places where where I'm going to like it a little bit and not be able to really do it. And luckily, maybe in my first 3 months, I heard you say that mountains are moved a spoonful at a time, and all we needed to do was worry about today's spoonful and a day at a time, and to go out tomorrow and try to do something for somebody and not get caught. And that'll take a self-centered somebody like me all day till the next meeting to accomplish that. And the first night I was there, I sat in that seat, and at the end of the meeting, the secretary did something very nice for me, and I wasn't sure how nice it was at the time, but she brought me a vision for you at the end of the meeting, and she asked me to read that portion of a vision for you and pray us out of there. And I didn't know what pray us out of there meant, but a vision for you. I said yes. And I want to tell you something, that yes is the best answer you can give in Alcoholics Anonymous. Yes. Yes, I'll set up chairs. Yes, I'll make coffee. Yes, I'll go there. Yes, I'll talk. Yes, I'll lead. Yes, I'll sponsor you. It keeps me in the room. It keeps me in the room when my head won't stay here. It keeps me in the room when my heart doesn't feel like being here. It keeps me in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous when everything else tells me I should be drinking. And so service has always held me in good stead. Now, I still have to work the program. I still have to take these steps. I have to incorporate them in my life on a daily basis, which includes service a lot. But I truly believe in keeping my physical being in a safe place. And in the beginning, I drank after 89 days, and that edge was coming back, and all I could think of was I had that one reservation. I went back to the days of the nut house, and I just wasn't sure that with all my disorders and all of the medication that I had needed at one time without a drink, if I was going to be able to, if the 12 steps were going to be big enough for somebody like me. I just wasn't sure. And when that edge started to come back at about 89 days, I thought, I'm going to have a big book and a beer. That's it. But as soon as I took that drink, I had to finish the drunk, but I didn't want to be there anymore. I wanted what you had again. I wanted what I had just a few minutes ago. I wanted that back. And I couldn't have it back, and I was scared, because then I heard you guys, I remembered you guys telling me, it's not a revolving door. We are not guaranteed a way back in. We're welcomed back in if we get here, but we can't always stay. And that's on me. And it seemed like a cosmic memo. As soon as I took that drink, the cosmic memo went out, and all the old people were calling, and the old guys, Easy and Willie, and all of those people showing up again. Easy standing on my front porch, and I've got a beer in my hand. I'm saying, yeah, I'm in AA now. And he's like, well, that's good. And I finished that drunk the next day, and my sponsor was sitting there at the kitchen table with me, and that was the last drink I had to have. And that was September 25th, 1987. And she took me up to a big book study that night, and I got commitments in my home group. And I got, my favorite was the coffee commitment. I mean, I had ashtrays and coffee cups and all that kind of stuff, but my favorite was the coffee commitment, because I got out of work at 5:05 or at 5 o'clock, and at 5:05 I was in the grocery store. I was buying stir sticks and napkins and cake and thinking about you. And I had no idea when I got here what self-centeredness looked like or felt like. I didn't know, I couldn't get my head around what self-centeredness meant. And you kept telling me that's what my problem was. Self-centeredness, we believe, is the root of our problem. And so when I did these things, when I did the things you asked me to do, I got relief from myself for just a little while, just a little relief. And in getting that result, then I wanted to do it again. And that's what taught me to stay in service. I just stay in service, I get this result. I came here, I did this stuff because I had to, and now I do it because I want to, because I like the result. And I'm a results girl still. If it works, I'm going to do it again. And now I'm here because I want to be. And I did that coffee commitment, and then pretty soon I had to learn to stick my hand out and talk to you one-on-one, and I didn't know how to do that. And I was sitting through those coffee breaks, oh my God, those 10-minute coffee breaks that feel 2 hours long, because I don't know anybody. And I'm sitting there, and I know I belong there, but I can't get all the way in. And so again, I say that God help me prayer, and I'm sitting back in the corner, and I just didn't know. And again, I had to sneak up on myself. I saw a guy named Doug P. walk by me, and he started at one end of the room, and he shook people's hands and said, how you doing? I'm Doug, and I'm an alcoholic. And he didn't wait for an answer or anymore. He just went to the next person and said, how you doing? I'm Doug, and I'm an alcoholic. And so I got right behind him like a little baby duck, and I started doing the same thing. How you doing? I'm Carla. And that has held me in good stead. I do that today, and almost 17 years later, and it just pulls me into the room a little bit, gets me out of my head, and it teaches me a little bit more about you and lets me be a little bit more a part of the world. And I really, really heard that. If you don't grow, you go. And I don't want to go. So I got to stay somewhat willing. I have to stay in some posture of teachability. When I was in that rehab years and years ago, I was 16 years old, and they made me wear a sign that said, it was like an Eat at Joe's big old sign, and it said, no, it all starts again. And I never want to forget that sign, because that's just me. I got a pride like a Siamese cat, like I mean to do all the stupid, goofy, dumbass things that I do. And have you ever seen a Siamese cat? He goes running across the carpet, and then he hits the linoleum, bams into the cupboard. And then he shakes it off, and he stands up, and he says, I did that very well, didn't I? Yeah. And that's me. And I have to ask, what do I do? I believe that my God speaks through people. And my friend Don Newcomb puts it like this. He said, he says, I pray to God and I ask God for help and he sends me one of you. I ask one of you for help and you send me to my God. And that's how it is. It's a circle. And I ask my sponsor what to do. I call her on my days that I call her and I say, what do I do? And some days my ideas are good. That promise of the 11th step tells me that someday I'll be able to rely on my intuition. But then it also says that I'm going to act I'm going to do some absurd things too on the way to learning that. And I just like to check out my good ideas, especially the good ideas I want to check out with my sponsor. And I want to tell you that after a couple of years, I had you guys. I had been real tight, and I went to meetings, especially like on holidays, and I loved knowing that you guys were open on Christmas. And I'd go to the big groups where they were having the alkathons, and I just couldn't believe we had 24-hour AA, and we had Midnight Madness on Saturday night, and I was just in these meetings all the time, and I stayed very close, and I took those steps that first year, and then women started asking me to sponsor them. And that's awesome. I've always been plugged in. I have a sponsor and to be a sponsor. And then they said to me, if you have 30 days, you have something to give someone who has 29. If you have a car, you have a ride to give somebody who doesn't. That while I'm taking, to come in here and try to see what I can give. And that's on the way. That's from day one. And just to do the best I could, the best spoonful I can every day. And after a couple of years, like I said, I'd had you guys and my daughter. Still, I was a better mother than I had ever been, but I wasn't a great mother. And I had a lot to learn, and I had a lot to do to make up and to learn how to live the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous in my life, at my home. And my daughter had joined a gang. She was coming home beat up and bloody, and she needed some big help. And she was looking for that camaraderie outside of the house now because she wasn't getting it from me. And she needed help, and I had to put her in a treatment center, and she was there for like 6 months, and it was where I learned how to just take actions every day that I don't necessarily get to see the results. I just got to get up and do the job. And some days it was great, and some days it wasn't. And some days she loved me, and some days she hated me. But after the 6 months was over and she came home, things were a little bit better. They weren't perfect. They never are. AA has never removed all the problems from my life. It's only, or prevented them from coming in. It's always only enabled me to live my life. Only enabled me to face and walk through anything that comes my way, and with a little modicum of dignity and grace. Not always. Sometimes I look really bad, but it's taught me how to live my life. And I've cried all the tears, and I've laughed all the laughs, and I've had my equal share of both, and I love it. It's what I always wanted to do, and I didn't know it. When my daughter got out, things were, like I said, better, but she wanted to go live with her dad, and so she did. And while she was living with her dad, I stayed active in AA, and I'd gotten a better job because I kept showing up doing what they thought needed doing instead of what I thought needed doing. And I was working at a great investment firm, a fancy place. I never even would have walked in the front doors of years before, but I was working there and now getting better. And after my 5th year cake, a couple months later, I'd gone to the gym one night, and I came home and I took my shower and I went to bed, and I woke up in the middle of the night to a man standing over my bed with a knife to my neck and his hand over my mouth, and he said, "Don't say a word or I'll cut your head off." And he took the telephone cord and he tied my hands behind my back, and he raped me and he robbed me that night in my bed. And now at 5 years of sobriety, I had a big God. I had a real God. I had a God that gave me a little bit of peace at a time like that. And that's all I ever wanted. That's all I ever wanted, was that sense of strength and serenity, the kind that were, but the best idea of that I had ever had was when the television series Kung Fu came out. I was in about the 6th grade, and the TV star was Kane, and David Carradine played him. And it was just this character who stood very tall and serene, and pearls of wisdom rolled off his tongue. And when they messed with him, he kicked their ass. He was always okay, and that was the idea that I took around with me. And so when I got here, though, I was like the bewildered one. The 12 and 12 talks about people, those of us who have just all these cockeyed ideas about God, and not one of them really work well. We just have a whole bunch of them, and that was me. And a lady named Susan said, "Why don't you just call him God and let him get as big as he needs to be in your life? Start from there." And at first it was a problem-solving God, because I had lots of problems when I was new. And now it's a partnership. Now I take God everywhere, and that's evolved, just everywhere. Everywhere I am, God needs to be too, and I try to be aware of that. Now some people invite him into the car. I just talk to him. I just talk to him because he knows how I talk. And so I don't have to put on any big fancy airs. I just talk to my God. And that night I needed that God, and I got a sense of peace for a little while, and I asked God first I asked God that if my daughter had to hear some bad news about her mother, that please let somebody be there with her. And it's only Alcoholics Anonymous that could have fit me to say a prayer like that at a time like that. Now, we quickly returned to me after that prayer, and what do I do now? And I knew that was going to be the way it was supposed to be either way. And eventually we got into a little tussle, and he went out the same window that he came in, and he got away for a while. And it turned out that I knew him. I had known him. I had watched him get sober 30 days before I did. And when he went out like that. You know, I watched him get his life back, his wife back, his kids back, and then he joined the church and left AA behind. And what I learned from watching that was that the big book tells us to be quick to see where religious people are right. And I understand that. But there are a lot of people who can go to that church sermon on Sunday morning and go home and have a glass of wine. And I am not one of those people. And I need to come here first to remember who and what I am, and the terms of my disease, and the conditions of how I recover, and the treatment for my disease, and then I can go worship anywhere I want. And I came to know my God under the lash of alcoholism, and I don't happen to have any big formal way of worship, but if I did, I could go as long as I come here first and don't leave it behind. Anyway, there was a trial that followed, and my sponsor told me that I was going to have to forgive this guy, that we are people who can't handle even seemingly justifiable resentments, and I know she's right about that. I'm 5 years sober, and I've had experience with holding on to resentments, but the guy had scared me, and when I get afraid like that, I get mad. And anger is my favorite character defect. It's my favorite instinct gone awry. You know, it makes me feel like I've got a purpose and power and some kind of focus. And then again, at 5 years of sobriety, it's like a suit that doesn't fit anymore, so I got to do something different. And all I could do was pray for the willingness to be willing, and that's where I start most of the time, when I have no idea where to start. It's just, I know God is or he isn't, and I believe he is, and then I got to turn my will and my life over one more time, my thoughts and my actions over my God. And so I found that a trial followed, like I said, and he had called up a lot of the old guys that I had known, including my ex-husband, all the guys from the bar 5 years before, and they all witnessed as to who I used to be, and Jesus. Then I had to get somebody to testify on my behalf, and the division head of my department, at the firm where I worked, he volunteered to come in, and they told him all about who I used to be. And this is a guy who reads about people like us in the paper, you know, but he showed up anyway, and he said, she shows up early and she stays late, and she was where she said she was. And that's Alcoholics Anonymous speaking for itself. You know, you guys taught me how to do that, to show up where I'm supposed to be. And because of that, it could be proven where I was. Go figure. I don't know how that works. And so that was one thing. And then I had to sit up, and it was my turn to testify, and I looked out and I saw him sitting at the defense table, and that was a place where I could easily be sitting. I sat when I was younger, and I could be sitting again if I were to take a drink. Might not be rape, but it could be something equally as destructive. And what I realized, what happened for me, was we just became two alcoholics on opposite sides of the courtroom. That four-step prayer says, this is a sick man like me, a sick person like me. Other people are usually spiritually sick also, like me. They, like ourselves, are spiritually sick, and I had to, God save me from being angry, and it didn't happen overnight, but a chink in the armor, just little by little, and I was able to have a change of perception yet again, and it didn't have to color the rest of my life. And I'm not going to tell you that fear like that went away right away, but it had to dissipate. And he got 20 years, he did 10, and during that whole time, my home group swooped in right around me. The Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous made sure that I knew that I was not the old girl that I used to be, that I kept thinking that maybe that's, people like me are bound to have something like that happen. You know, it used to happen out on the street all the time, but we get up and we just keep walking because nobody's going to care anyway. And now I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm not real sure, but I stood up because you told me I could. And then you swooped in and you'd let me know that I was not the old girl, that I was somebody new. I was not that woman who walked in the doors 5 years before. And then 10 years later, when he got out, a year ago, July, that my home group again swooped in around me to be sure that I knew that I was going to be safe, that nobody was going to hurt me, and that he was probably going to keep a wide berth, and that maybe he availed himself one more time of H&I and in prison. You know, that's why we go in there, to carry the message one more time. As long as we're alive and standing, maybe we can hear it again. But that's really none of my business. It's just I pray for peace. I just pray for that peace, and I thank you for that fellowship. You know. I don't have time to go into all of it, but I ended up going back to school, and I did well for a while, and then I ended up bankrupt. My ego got away from me, and I didn't check in with people, and at 10 years of sobriety I was bankrupt and ended up having to pay a whole lot of money back that I didn't want to pay. And now legally, bankruptcy usually frees us from all those charges, but see, I got a spiritual, I got to answer to a spiritual, a higher authority, I think, and that was my gut, and my gut was twisting, and I knew that somewhere in there I was responsible for that bankruptcy, and that this guy, the guy I'd loaned the money to, could not have knocked down the house of cards if I hadn't set it up, and somewhere in there I was responsible. And the bad news was I was responsible, and the good news was that as soon as I can find my part in a resentment, that usually it takes the sting out of it enough for me to be able to get up, move through, and make the amends and take care of business. But I needed help. I needed human help, and I got Rita Gata as a sponsor at the time. She had paid back a whole lot of money that she didn't have the money to pay back, and I got right behind her, and she taught me how to do it. And I knew one more time I probably wasn't going to like it all the time, but I could do it. It could be done. And that's all the human beings are here for, is just to show. The people walking ahead of me are here to show, and sometimes behind me, to just show it can be done. It can be done. It can be done sober without having to take a drink. And I paid a lot of that money back. And I want to let you know I made amends to my family, and that my father doesn't have to sit up nights anymore waiting for the news to come on to be sure his daughter's name isn't on the list of the serial killers of the day, you know. And my mother, when my 20 plus years ago, my baby sister committed suicide, and it took her all weekend to die. And I sat in the waiting room, and I went out to the car every now and then, and I took drinks, and I came back in drunk, and I'd treat my mother shamelessly, and I blamed her for my sister's suicide. And then just 3 years ago, my baby brother died of this disease at the age of 30. He wouldn't stop doing the crank, and he had little pinholes in his heart, and he wouldn't stop drinking. So mercifully, he died in that hospital bed. And when he did, I got to go up, because of you guys, because I'm spiritually fit enough, I got to go up and be there for my mother and be the daughter that she never had before, and be the kind of daughter she always thought I could be. I want to tell you that my daughter came back to live with me, and I'm now the proud grandmother of 2 little boys, one 3.5 and one 9, and they love their grandmother, and they have never had to see me drunk or in the kind of rage that their mother had to see me. And my daughter's 26 years old now, and she trusts me. And that took a long time. It took that spoonful by spoonful, inch by inch, every day, just coming here and getting it from you, getting fed and feeding you, and then going, taking it back out there and practicing these principles to the best of my ability in all my affairs. And you guys gave me this life. This is a place for me to steal a line from a movie, a place for me where dreams I never had have come true. Didn't even know I wanted this life. And now that I've got it, I've got to do everything to maintain and enlarge that spiritual connection. And if you're new, I want to let you know that it'll work for you too. All you have to do is stay with us and get a sponsor. It's a good idea. And take these steps, and don't drink. Thanks for having me here tonight.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.